They called it a small family dinner, but the moment I stepped into the backyard and saw more than 80 people, string lights hanging like a wedding, and a shimmering banner that read "Welcome Baby Isabella" between two maple trees shedding their leaves, my heart skipped a beat. Not out of surprise or emotion, but because I knew instantly this wasn't a party for me. And just as I suspected, the entire bonus I had worked 3 years to earn after my promotion, $14,000, had vanished for an event I wasn't even consulted on. If you've ever had to choose between your dignity and your family, leave a comment, hit like, share this story, and follow the channel so you won't miss what's ahead. I'm Isabella, 34 years old, a market research analyst at a fashion company in Minneapolis. The eldest in a middle-class American family. I used to think being kind and hardworking was enough, but that day made it painfully clear. Silent sacrifices don't earn gratitude, they just train people to expect more. Autumn in Minnesota always carries a quiet fragility. The first golden leaves had just begun to fall in the yard when my mom called, unusually upbeat. "Next Sunday we'll have a little get-together," she said cheerfully, "to celebrate your promotion." I hesitated. "It's just a small family dinner," she added, clearly reading my doubt. "Your dad, you, Erin and her husband. Nothing big." I didn't answer right away. The call ended a few minutes later, with her reminding me to pick a dress that was elegant but still approachable. That stuck with me the rest of the night. Still, I decided to go. Maybe, just maybe, my mom was trying to do the right thing. Maybe this time would be different. I even brought a bottle of my favorite Prosecco and a little gift for Erin, my sister, since she'd just announced her pregnancy. I thought about calling her to ask a few things, but didn't. I figured it'd be better to wait for Sunday night. My parents live in the southern suburbs of the city, in Bloomington. Traffic was light that day, and I arrived right on time. At 5:55 p.m., I turned into the neighborhood and hit the brakes. Both sides of the street were packed with cars, some SUVs even parked up on the grass. I slowly parked 3 houses away, a chill crawling up my spine even though it was only 60 degrees outside. My heart sped up when I saw lights glowing from the backyard. There was music, laughter. I texted to confirm the time, then walked toward the house, clutching the handle of my purse tightly. The door opened. My mom stood there, wine glass in hand, her ivory blouse pressed like it had just come from the dry cleaner. "Isabella, everyone's been waiting for you." She pulled me into a quick hug, the faint scent of Chanel No. 5 lingering. She hadn't hugged me since last Christmas, after I refused to give $500 for Erin's surprise wedding gift. "Everyone?" I asked. She smiled, tugging me toward the backyard. "Don't be so serious. It's just a little party." The door swung open. I froze. White folding chairs, baby's breath flowers in mason jars, a backdrop with pink clouds, and silver foil letters that read, "Welcome, baby Isabella." Under a massive canopy, a buffet of Italian food was being served by a man in a white chef's hat, ladling risotto from a copper pan. To the left, a gift table stacked with over 30 sparkling packages. The first guest to shake my hand was an elderly man I didn't recognize. "Here she is. Thank you for this wonderful party." I smiled. Looking around, I counted at least 70 guests. A live saxophone band played a soft cover of "Can't Help Falling in Love." I turned to my mom. "I had no idea this was happening." "You're overthinking it. Come congratulate your sister." Then I saw Erin, 6 months pregnant, cheeks glowing, eyes beaming, waving at me from across the yard. "You made it. Isn't it amazing? Mom did everything." I slowed my pace, feeling like I had been dropped into a movie I hadn't been given the script for. Some guests came over to chat. An older woman gently patted my shoulder. "Your mom said you paid for everything. So generous of you." My neck flushed. I looked at my mom, who just took another sip of wine and smiled without a word. The more people talked to me, the more thank yous I heard, and the number my mind started to do grew colder. Standing alone near the drinks table, I glanced again at the banner. Baby Isabella. My name. Coincidence or calculated? They had used it to label a party I'd had no say in, a party I had unknowingly funded. Then another aunt leaned in close, her tone almost gleeful. Can't believe you still had that old joint account with your parents. Lucky, huh? Otherwise this wouldn't have been half as elegant. I turned away. My breathing grew shallow. Something old stirred inside me. And I hadn't realized that was just the beginning. I followed my mom further into the backyard, eyes scanning every detail of the party they assumed I paid for. White chairs tied with satin bows, antipasti platters from Leona's, an upscale Italian restaurant in Uptown I used to dream of trying for a special occasion. There was even a cocktail station, the bartender in a black shirt pouring a blush pink drink someone called the Auntie Isida, a name that sent a cold jolt down my spine. Which account did you use? I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. That joint account from when you were at Purdue, my mom replied like it was nothing. You never closed it, your dad and I are still co-owners, everything came out of there. I stopped. I'd kept that account only to transfer money to them a few years back when they were short. Last time I used it was to send $200 for their winter electricity bill. I had forgotten it even existed. I never agreed to use it for this, I said slowly. She didn't meet my eyes. She clinked glasses with a silver-haired woman and beamed. Well, you didn't say no either. Come on, don't be sour. Erin's over the moon. Erin stood in the center of the yard, one hand on her belly, blushing as someone teased her about naming the baby after me. I knew it wasn't her fault, but her ease, her glow, made me feel all the more pushed aside, like I was just a living credit card standing off stage. A relative I didn't recognize came over, shook my hand, and thanked me for making everything so perfect. I nodded, mechanical. A child ran by and spilled a cup of water on my leg. Ice cold. Wet. I didn't react. I needed air. I walked across the yard, dodging clusters of people taking selfies in front of the baby Isabella backdrop. I stood by the fence, staring into the distance, trying to steady my breathing. A memory flashed. Me at 9, hunched over a math worksheet at the kitchen table while my parents argued about rent. Later, my mom found my piggy bank and took most of it to buy a plane ticket for Aunt Cynthia to visit. She said, "You're just a kid, you don't need much." Everything starts with small things like that. What's going on? Erin's voice came from behind. I turned around. She stood there, slightly out of breath like she'd rushed over. Nothing, I said, just lightheaded. Erin grabbed my hand. Cold, a sharp contrast to her earlier glow. I didn't know Mom took money from your account. I thought you offered. That's what she said. I looked at her. She seemed genuine. Maybe she really didn't know. But she didn't ask either. Didn't double check. Just like so many in our family, once they hear Isabella's got it, that's all it takes to greenlight anything. I didn't know about this party until I walked through the door, I said. And I never agreed to pay for it. Erin bit her lip. I'm sorry, really. If I'd known, I wouldn't have let people think that. I nodded, but I knew that apology wouldn't get back the $14,000. The money I was planning to use as a down payment on a small condo in Linden Hills. The first place I could truly call mine. Another relative walked over, handed me a cocktail. For the party's top sponsor, he said, narrowing his eyes when he saw my expression. I gave a tight smile, then placed the drink on the nearest table. My mom appeared again, linking her arm through mine like she was about to lead me on stage. Everyone's waiting for you to say a few words, she said under her breath. Don't embarrass the family. I didn't follow her. I stood still. This isn't right, I said. And you know it. You're blowing this out of proportion. You want to shame me in front of everyone? I met her eyes, held the gaze. In that moment, she wasn't the warm mother from my memories. She was the coordinator, the director of a performance I'd been pulled into as a silent extra. I turned away, leaving her standing there. Somewhere across the yard, someone played Here Comes the Sun. The tone felt so wildly out of place, I nearly laughed. I didn't leave yet. I needed to see everything a little more clearly. Every gift, every look that casually labeled me the sponsor, every detail of a party I never chose. Because I needed to remember it all, to never forget where I stood in this family's hierarchy. And then, I discovered something worse than the money being taken. Something my mom had hidden well, waiting for me behind the gift table. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a few minutes, maybe 10. Laughter and chatter buzzed around me like background noise. I couldn't parse anymore. The only thing I could focus on was a white A3 board propped on a wooden easel, framed in baby's breath and pink ribbons. On it was a list, honorary sponsors. My name was first bolded, printed right beneath the words, "For a beautiful beginning for baby Izzy." Next to it was a photo of me from 2 years ago at my old office, back when I had longer hair and hadn't switched glasses yet. Someone had printed it without permission, framed it in a tiny heart cutout. Below it read, "With full support from Isabella Carter, the wonderful sister and role model for our sweet baby-to-be." I heard glasses clink behind me, laughter spilling from the dessert table crowd. The smell of fruit tarts and my mom's overpowering perfume still clung to my coat. My fingers tightened around my purse strap, for the 4th time since I arrived. "Sweetie, put my name down for the crib," a woman with dark curly hair said, handing me a gift box. "Oh, and the anti-reflux pillow too. I can't remember the price, but it wasn't cheap." I nodded, picked up a pen from the box, and wrote her name in the logbook, under "Gifted by," description, and "thank you note." "Thanks for coming," I said quietly, like muscle memory from my days organizing corporate events. By the 8th gift, I couldn't take it anymore. I looked up at Aaron, still opening presents, smiling wide at a tiny elephant-shaped towel. Someone snapped a photo. Someone else filmed. An aunt thanked me for always being so generous. My heart pounded in vain. I walked away from the gift table and slipped behind the party tent where unopened delivery boxes were still scattered. A crumpled receipt fluttered on a plastic table. Leona's Catering. 74 meals at $52 each, plus service fees and tax, totaling over $4,200. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture, then opened the camera and began documenting everything: the backdrop, the foil letters, guest name cards, cocktail bar, the 3-tier cake from Eclair and Bloom. Each frame was a price tag, chosen without me, paid by me, and hidden from me. Each click pressed heavier on my chest. Not because of the money, but because I felt like I'd been cloned into the perfect, sponsoring sister image for everyone else to label. I didn't have time to process more. My dad was walking toward me, glass of whiskey in hand. "You're amazing," he smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Your mom pulled it off, but it's all thanks to you." "I never agreed to pay for this," I said, my eyes locked on his drink. Macallan Rare Cask. I knew he used to call it too fancy to even dream about. "Your mom said you wanted to do something special for Aaron. I mean, I thought it was a bit much, but once in a lifetime, right?" I didn't reply. "Besides," he shrugged, "you're doing well. Your mom said you got a bonus. What, over 14 grand? I exhaled slowly. That money was mine, for a condo down payment. She took all of it. He blinked, looked at me longer than usual, but finally said, "Well, it's still for the family. It's not really gone." I took a step back, just enough for his hand to fall away. He nodded, turned, and tossed over one last line. "Don't stress. You'll make it back tomorrow." I watched his blue coat disappear into the crowd. A gust of wind swept through the white chairs, a napkin lifted from the table, flapping like no one even tried to catch it. My phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Don't leave just yet. I'm about to give a speech and mention you first. Everyone's watching." Put my phone away and walked into the house through the kitchen door, heading straight for the bathroom. Locked the door, leaned against the wall. My hand was trembling a bit, not out of anger, but from the creeping realization that I had lost control of everything tonight, including how I was being portrayed. I sat down on the toilet lid, hugging my knees, trying to breathe steadily. Part of me wanted to walk out right then. The other part, strangely, wanted to stay, to witness the full extent of this unraveling. As if I needed to see it all with my own eyes, just to understand what had truly been taken from me. Then came the knock, 3 light, hesitant taps. My mother's voice, clear, calm, but colder than usual. "Isabella, open the door! I need to speak with you, before the thank you toast." I stood up and slowly unlocked the door. I didn't know what she would say, but somehow I knew the worst part wasn't even about the money. I opened the door. She stood there with a champagne glass in one hand, the other gently holding her dress, her red lipstick slightly smudged at the corner of her mouth. She looked me over. No rush, no awkwardness. Then tilted her head slightly, motioning for me to step out. "We can talk in your dad's office," she whispered, as if not wanting anyone to hear. "It'll be quick." I followed. The oak floor creaked under our feet. The room was just as I remembered it. Navy carpet, walnut desk, old bookshelf lined with detective novels Dad never finished. The familiar mix of polished wood and leftover cigarette smoke from when he used to sneak a puff in there. She closed the door, but didn't lock it. "Isabella, you really worried me," she said, setting her glass on the desk. Her voice dropped, but there was no softness in it. "You disappeared from the party without a word. Guests kept asking. Aaron started to notice." I leaned against the bookshelf, stayed silent. She sat down in Dad's swivel chair, adjusted her dress, crossed her arms. "I know you're upset," she began, "but you have to understand. Using that money was for the greater good." I tilted my head slightly, not surprised, exactly, but my neck flushed hot. That bonus was mine, for a home, not for silk flowers and a 3-tier cake. She shrugged, like I was complaining about a dinner order gone wrong. "You can buy a house anytime, but a baby shower? This only happens once." I wanted to make a statement for Erin, for the baby. "She's named after you. Isn't that something to be proud of?" I let out a dry laugh. "I never agreed to that, and I never agreed to pay." "But you left the account accessible. It's the one you opened jointly with your father and me. I simply used my access rights. That doesn't justify withdrawing $14,000 without telling me." She was silent for a few seconds. Her eyes stopped avoiding mine. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I didn't mean to take it all, but things went over budget. I planned to talk to you after the party." "You mean after I'd already been turned into the accidental sponsor?" She sighed, pressing a hand to her temple. Not apologetic, just tired. "You always act like the only victim. This family doesn't function without you." "That's true, I admit it. But you also have responsibilities. That's what family is." I walked over to the desk and opened the old laptop. Dad's, the one he used to check stock prices even though he never invested. "I'm locking that account tonight," I said, "and I'll ask the bank to review all recent activity." She flinched. Her lips tightened like I'd said something cruel. "Isabella, do you realize if you do that, payments will bounce? Some vendors haven't been paid in full." "They're not my vendors. They were hired by the person who placed the orders." "So you'll let your father and me be humiliated? People will find out. They'll know you took the money back." I looked straight at her. Clear. Cold. "Yeah." A long silence followed. She blinked. I saw real confusion in her face. "I promised Erin that you'd help decorate the nursery." "You promised without asking?" "Because you always help. I assumed this time was no different." That hit the nerve. I always helped. From Erin's 6th grade uniform to the honeymoon they couldn't afford. But I hadn't planned to help. I had planned to start stopping. I'll handle everything related to my account. As for the nursery, talk to Erin. She's pregnant, Isabella. You're really going to throw the family into this mess? You already threw me in first. I opened the door. I won't be staying for the rest of the party. Erin'll be hurt. Then be honest with her. She didn't follow me. Just sat there in the dim light, slowly running her fingers along the rim of her empty glass. I walked out, took the side exit, stepped into the front yard. No one noticed. Music still floated from behind. A guest laughed out loud. I opened my car door. The October chill swept in, bringing the scent of wet leaves and barbecue smoke from a few houses down. I started the engine and eased onto the main road, steering past tightly parked SUVs. My heartbeat had steadied, but my hands still gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned pale. That night, I didn't drive home right away. I circled Lake Harriet 3 times, then parked near the playground. Sitting there, watching the water reflect the distant street lamps, I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, checked the balance, then looked through the transaction history. And that's when I saw it. Mom had started withdrawing funds 3 days ago, right after that lunch where I mentioned my bonus. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a plan, a deliberate one. And I knew I had to respond, not just to get the money back, but to reclaim something even more important. I got back to my apartment around 10 p.m. The wind on the 5th floor swept through the narrow hallway, carrying the smell of grilled food from someone's party a few doors down. I went straight to the kitchen, didn't turn on the overhead lights, just flipped on the soft yellow one above the counter, poured myself a glass of water, set my phone down on the cold stone countertop. My hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but because there was so much to do, and I didn't want to mess up any step. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account. $14,067, the exact amount of my post-tax bonus. All of it had been withdrawn in 15 separate transactions, each ranging from a few hundred to nearly 1,000, all sent to unfamiliar vendors: G&B Rentals, Leona's, Baby Bright Events, Floral West, Snapshots by Ava. I started a spreadsheet. Column A, transaction name. Column B, payment date. Column C, description. Column D, screenshot. Around the 8th row, I paused. My right hand had hit the delete key by mistake. My fingers were damp with sweat. I wiped them on the hem of my t-shirt and kept going. By the 12th row, I realized I couldn't just collect data and wait. I needed to cut ties entirely, not just freeze the old account. I had to review every piece of my financial setup. I pulled out my personal finance notebook from the bottom drawer, the one I'd used to track spending back when I was an intern. The first page still had a neat line in purple pen: "Don't let kindness cost your peace." I started a new list, every place where I'd ever shared financial access with my family. Joint account with my parents, opened in 2010 at Bank of Great Lakes. Backup credit card with my mom's name added, created during her hypertension scare in the winter of 2018. Recurring transfer helping Erin pay off her wedding gift loan, still auto-deducting $150 a month. Family phone plan login code, all under my name. I called the bank's emergency line at 10:38. A woman named Karen picked up. Her voice was calm but firm. "I need to report unauthorized withdrawals. The account is under my name, but 2 others, my parents, are co-owners. They used it without my consent." Karen asked carefully, step by step. I explained briefly, without sugarcoating. "They're relatives, yes, but using the money without notice, using all of it, is wrong. I didn't authorize it. I have evidence." Karen paused for a moment before continuing. "Since they're authorized users, this case will need fraud review, but you can temporarily revoke access and request internal review." I agreed. 5 minutes later, my mother's father's logins were disabled. I opened a brand new account at a different bank and transferred the remaining balance, around $262. Not much, but at least it was mine. Then I called an old friend, Marissa, who now works in estate and credit law. If a co-owner empties a joint account without telling the other party, I asked her, can that be grounds for legal action? Marissa hesitated a moment before answering. It's tough. Legally, they still have usage rights, but if you can show that the money, like your salary or bonus, was clearly yours and they exploited your trust, then you might file a civil claim. Or use a different approach. What kind of approach? You still co-own your parents' house, right? From when you helped them refinance back in 2020? Yeah, the bank required it because their credit scores were too low. Then you can use that as leverage. File a partition request to split the property. It'll force them to the negotiating table. I sat quietly, eyes drifting toward the kitchen window, where the street lamp's orange light spilled over the edge of the balcony. I don't want to escalate this too far. You're not escalating, Marissa said. You're protecting yourself. And sometimes self-protection has to be louder than kindness. I hung up after asking her to prepare the paperwork, not to file it immediately, just to have it ready. Right person, right moment. I went to my room, opened the closet, pulled out the document box, the one holding the deed copy for my parents' house. The paper still bore the seal, my name printed next to my dad's and mom's. There's something hard to describe about seeing your name on a property deed for a house you've never been invited to paint a wall in. I placed the paper back in its envelope, sealed it, done. I sat on the bed, the clock blinked 1:17 a.m. My phone buzzed twice. One message from Aaron, one from my mother. I didn't open either. Because tomorrow, I had work to do. And no one touched my money but me. I didn't know how they'd respond, but something told me this wasn't going to end with one party. The first message came at 7:12 a.m. Isabella, what's going on? Mom says the account is locked. Call me back now. The second came exactly 1 minute later, from Mom. Is there an issue with the account? I can't pay the remaining balance for the backdrop. Call urgently. I stared at the screen without replying. Just set the phone down and kept making coffee. The grinder hummed in my small kitchen. No doorbell, no voices, just the way I liked it. A Monday morning in Portland, early November, gray skies but no rain yet. I drank half a cup, then opened my laptop and checked emails from the bank and Marissa. The bank confirmed the old account was permanently closed, all secondary access removed. Transaction records had been forwarded to the legal department. Marissa's email was short. Partition request filed, response deadline, 10 days. I hadn't planned on going that far this soon. But when I read the third message from my mom, "What you're doing is tearing this family apart," I knew there was no going back. Around 9 o'clock, Erin called. I let it ring. She called again. I picked up the third time. What are you doing? Mom's been crying all morning. Dad's furious. People are saying you froze the family account. It's not a family account. It's an account under my name. But Mom said you agreed to fund the party. And now you're pulling the money, locking down expenses, and leaving everyone in chaos. I closed my eyes, counted to 3. Erin, I never agreed to pay for anything. I didn't even know about the party until I arrived. Mom and Dad emptied the account and used it to fund everything, then let people believe I'd volunteered to cover it all. Silence on the other end. I have the proof. Transactions, receipts, bank confirmations, everything. A few more seconds passed. I really didn't know. I just assumed Mom was telling the truth. I'm sorry. Her voice got smaller, almost cracked. I don't blame you. I'm just scared things won't be the same anymore. I looked out the window, where the sky still hung gray, as if Portland had decided to keep its gloom all to itself. They shouldn't stay the same. I've been carrying the load this whole time, and Mom and Dad have always assumed I'd just handle it. So what now? Are you cutting them off? No, I said slowly. I want them to be accountable. I want them to understand that no one gets to make decisions on my behalf, especially not when it comes to money, my name, or promises I never made. Around noon, I got a call from Dad. No greeting, just a sharp sentence. "What do you think you're doing, Isabella?" "What are you asking about?" "The partition filing. Why are you threatening the family with legal paperwork?" "It's not a threat, it's protection. We didn't steal, we borrowed, and it was for the greater good. There is no greater good that doesn't include me being asked." He exhaled loudly, then lowered his voice. "I just want to say, you're making this family look like a joke. Relatives are calling, asking why there's legal paperwork about the house. Is that really how you want people to see us? I'm not the one making it shameful, I'm just the one saying it out loud. If you've ever stayed silent because you weren't believed, or been blamed just for telling the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you think someone out there needs to hear it. Silence isn't loyalty, and honesty isn't betrayal." Around 5 p.m., I received an email from Marissa. "Your family has received the official filing. No direct response yet, but it looks like they're consulting an attorney." I sat still for a long time. Didn't check emails. Didn't reply to messages. Just finished the cold coffee from this morning and wrote a single line in my notebook. If I don't set the boundary, no one will notice how far they've already crossed it. I closed the notebook, cleared off my desk, got ready for a video call with HR the next morning to update my payroll information to the new bank. Before turning off the light, I checked my phone one last time. A new message from Mom. "If you want something, say it clearly. Your dad and I are waiting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at the house. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond right away, but I knew tomorrow I'd go. I arrived at 1:55 p.m. Not earlier, not later. Portland sky held its dull gray like it refused to let any brightness through. As I turned onto Maplewood Drive, my parents' house looked no different from the baby shower night. Except today, there were no cars spilling onto the street, no balloons, no one snapping photos by the white fence. I'd brought a printed copy of the property partition form Marissa had emailed that morning, not to hand over right away, but just in case. My hands weren't shaking, but they were colder than usual. I slipped the papers into my leather folder, adjusted my coat, and rang the bell. The door opened quickly. My mother. She wore a beige turtleneck sweater, no makeup, no hug, no smile. "Come in." I stepped over the threshold, instantly hit by the stale smell of burnt coffee and old citrus. Dad was already sitting at the dining table, hands clasped, posture unnaturally upright. On the table were 3 mugs, a teapot, and a stack of papers turned to a specific page. I sat across from him, back straight to match his. No one spoke for the first 5 seconds. "We want to talk calmly," Mom said. I gave a small nod. "Good, so do I." Dad tilted his head. "What you did with the bank caused us to miss the final payment to the event planner. Your mother's embarrassed. They're threatening to sue if we don't settle by the end of the week." "Then you two should pay them yourselves," I said. "I don't owe them anything." No one argued. Mom poured tea, her hand pausing mid-air, just slightly. "We're not here to argue. I want to know what you want in order to withdraw the legal filing about the house." I sat up straighter. "It's not a lawsuit. It's a lawful request to partition property. But if you want to resolve this without going to court, then I have conditions." Both of them looked at me. Dad gave a small, single nod. I opened my folder and placed a preliminary agreement Marissa had drafted on the table. No dramatic slide across the wood, no threat in my tone. Just a printed document clearly titled, "Agreement of Financial Boundaries." 4 points, I said. 1. Acknowledge, in writing, that withdrawing money from my account without permission was wrong. No loopholes, no deflections. Mom started to react, but I held up a hand. 2. Commit to repaying the full amount, $14,067, within 3 years. I don't need interest, just consistency. Dad raised his eyebrows. How much per month? I propose $390 a month. If there's a tough month, let me know in advance. No one spoke. 3. From now on, no one in this family may use my name, photo, or financial information without written consent. Not even for a wedding invitation? Mom asked, half sarcasm, half bitter. Yes. No invitation, no name cards, no anonymous sponsor, no hint that I'm paying, unless I've made that decision myself. I paused for a beat. 4. The whole family will attend at least 6 family counseling sessions with a therapist of my choosing. If you want me to withdraw the property partition filing, that's the non-negotiable condition. Dad stayed quiet. Mom looked down at the table. No yelling, no fist-pounding, just a long silence, where every word I'd spoken seemed to land and spread across the edges of cups, the table, the chairs. We don't have $390 a month, Mom whispered. Then cancel the cable, sell the liquor cabinet, or call the event planner and tell them they billed the wrong account. My tone stayed steady. You're punishing your own family, she said, looking straight at me. No, I'm teaching you how to treat me like an adult. Dad raised his hand slightly, signaling he wanted to speak. Isabella, if we agree, will you really stop the property split? As soon as the first payment is made, I'll file the withdrawal. But if that promise is broken, I'll refile. He nodded. No arguments. Mom didn't speak again. She simply pulled a pen from her sleeve and signed the agreement. Dad signed after her. I gathered the original copy and left a duplicate for them. As I stood up, Mom asked quietly, "What happens next?" I slung my bag over my shoulder and looked at her. Something in her eyes had softened. Not quite regret, but maybe just tired. Next, we learn how to start over. I walked out of that house with no one seeing me to the door, no sound of it closing behind me, just a light wind off the lake brushing against my face as I stepped down the porch steps, clutching the documents in my bag. Behind me, silence. Ahead, a lot left to sort through. But at least there was a period, if not the end. I still don't know how long my parents will honor the agreement, but I know this much. Words can't replace action. The first deposit came in on a Tuesday morning in mid-million-dollar amount, $390 exactly as agreed. No message, no note, no exclamation mark, no thanks for understanding. Just a flat notification from the bank. Incoming deposit, Franklin Carter. I stared at it a little longer than necessary, not happy, not angry, just noted. Like learning the difference between a real apology and one made just to dodge consequences. Maybe this was the same. I transferred the money straight into my apartment savings account, no hesitation. After we signed the agreement, my parents didn't reach out for nearly 10 days. Aaron did message me, inviting me to lunch, but I didn't reply right away. I was still going through all my financial accounts, unslinking old connections, changing passwords, canceling auto payments for things I'd been covering since 2020. One evening, I called Erin back. I didn't realize it had gotten that serious, she said, her voice steady like she was walking down a sidewalk. Mom always acted like you'd just say yes, so I never questioned it. I was sitting in the kitchen, pencil in hand, idly sketching curved lines into the edge of a newspaper. I don't blame you, I said. I let it go on too long. I made it a habit. They just got used to it. She was quiet for a second. Then I heard her exhale. I've been thinking a lot about when we were little. You always had to cook dinner when Mom worked late. And if I didn't understand my homework, Dad would ask you to help while I got to go out. I chuckled softly. I used to hate that you got to nap while I had to take out the trash, but I never said anything. I know, and I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner. Her voice was so honest, my throat tightened just a little. We made plans for lunch that Friday at a small sandwich place near Alberta Street. Erin walked there, wearing an olive green puffer jacket, hair tied back low, shoes speckled with mud. Her belly had rounded out clearly. When she sat across from me, the look she gave wasn't guarded like the months before. It was a look that asked to be heard. I still haven't picked a middle name for her, she said. First name's Emily, that part's decided. I smiled, tilted my head. I don't have a strong opinion. I know. But I wanted to ask anyway. I don't want to mess up again without realizing it. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I bit into the soft baguette. The butter and ham were a little salty, but just right. Names are your choice. But if you want your daughter to grow up knowing that kindness doesn't mean blind sacrifice, you can start by teaching her about boundaries. Erin nodded. I'll learn with her. After lunch, we walked one loop around Irving Park. Not much talking, just two adults side by side, not in the roles of the giving sister and the one who always received. That night, back home, I wrote a few lines in my journal. No one needs to agree I was right. They just need to understand me enough to stop. The first family counseling session took place a week later. I chose a therapist from a clinic on Hawthorne. An older woman named Lydia, maybe in her 50s, with a calm, even voice and little expression. My parents arrived on time, dressed like they were attending a board meeting. Mom sat with her arms crossed, eyes fixed on me for most of the first half. Dad gave short answers, voice dry. But Lydia didn't let it stall. She asked just one question. What does it feel like to be used without being asked? No one replied right away. I didn't either. Finally, my mother spoke. You're no longer trusted. I was surprised, not because she understood, but because she got the feeling right. Lydia nodded. Then let's begin from that feeling. Little by little, through the second and third sessions, the room softened. Dad started speaking in full sentences. Mom didn't defend herself as much. Sometimes she'd furrow her brow and pause rather than react. I'm not seeking redemption. I just need clear boundaries, so no one crosses them without being reminded. And only then can I lift my head and look at myself. Not as the daughter whose role was distorted, but as someone learning to love without sacrificing her identity. I don't know how this will end, but I do know this: the rest of the journey is no longer for anyone else. The apartment I bought is on the third floor of a small mid-century building, about a 15-minute drive from downtown Portland. The balcony overlooks a row of maples and the backyard of an indie bookstore. That alone made me say yes the second time I viewed it. Not big, not fancy, but just right. I signed the purchase contract at the end of January. Didn't tell my parents. No housewarming, no social media post. Just let Erin know. And Marissa, since she helped me review the paperwork one last time. On moving morning, I booked a rented pickup truck through an app. Everything I owned fit into 8 cardboard boxes, 2 suitcases, 1 bookshelf, and 3 potted plants. The driver's name was Malcolm, in his 50s, with a small tattoo on his left wrist. Quiet is power. You moving all this by yourself? He asked as I lifted the bookshelf. Yeah, it's not that much. He helped carry things over 3 trips, said little, but when I tried to tip him, he shook his head. I once left a family that didn't understand limits. I don't take money from people who walk out on their own 2 feet. I thanked him, and after he left, I stood in my empty apartment, surrounded by the faint ticking of the old heater, then opened each box like opening drawers of memory. No rush, no noise. I spent the first week arranging everything just the way I wanted. No one else deciding. Desk by the window, bookshelves near the kitchen, plants hanging where the sun hits. The fridge had no one else's leftovers, no family mugs I didn't choose. In the cabinets, I installed a digital lock with only 1 code, no spare key. Nothing left at my parents' house, no one asked. The feeling of peace didn't come instantly. It crept in, piece by piece, like a soft sweater that itches at first, until you realize it fits just right. Financially, I kept my usual habits, but added a new item in my budgeting spreadsheet. No support beyond set limits. I created a small fund for helping friends or family, but it was capped. No more emotion-based decisions. The monthly payments from my parents kept coming, like clockwork. I never replied. I just saved the confirmation emails, logged them in my files, and transferred the money into savings. In February, Erin sent me a handwritten card. Her writing leaned slightly, blue ink. "You're the first person who taught me that love shouldn't come with automatic sacrifice. I've never thanked you enough." I tucked it into a small wooden drawer where I keep things I don't need to show, but want to keep. In mid-March, I had a one-on-one session with Lydia, the last in the 6-session package I'd booked. She asked, "So where are you now, Isabella? Where do you think you've arrived?" I was silent for a moment. "I think I've left home without bringing the old foundation with me." Lydia nodded, jotted down a note. "And what will you do with that empty space?" I thought of my balcony, where I'd just planted cilantro and dill in 2 old pots. I thought of how I'd learned to brew coffee with just the right strength, not too much, not too little. I thought of yesterday's breakfast, hard-boiled eggs, toast, and a kiwi, each chosen by me, no one else. I'll replant, but I'll choose the seeds more carefully. In early April, I invited Erin over. No baking, no elaborate setup, just a sunny afternoon, 2 cups of mint tea, and a floor cushion I'd picked up at the flea market. She arrived carrying a small wooden box. "I don't know what this is for, I just liked it, and I thought maybe you could use it to keep something that you chose." I opened it. A simple linen-lined box. No lock. I placed it on the bookshelf between 2 novels I hadn't gotten around to rereading. When she left, I walked her down to the steps, not out of politeness, but because I wanted to see my sister walk away in her rightful role. As a sister, not a burden, not an expectation. May arrived quietly, the way things do in this city after the rain. The little balcony plants began sprouting clearly. Cilantro, dill, a bit of basil. Simple herbs I chose because I like how they smell in the morning. The apartment still wasn't filled with much, but it had a rhythm. The kettle whistling on time, the wind tapping the window at 6 o'clock, the soft sound of my heels crossing the wood floor. It was intentional quiet, not loneliness, just space that fit right. One Saturday morning, I got a text from Erin. "You free? I've got someone who wants to meet you." 15 minutes later, the door opened. She walked in, holding a pale gray baby seat, and inside was Emily. Tiny, wispy-haired, wide-eyed, taking in the room for the first time. I stood there, my hand frozen on the handle of my coffee mug, not from emotion, but because everything slowed down. The way the baby squinted at the light, her tiny hand opening and closing like she was discovering air. Not a smaller version of someone else, but a brand new person, fully present. Erin smiled and gently lowered the seat. "You should know who she's named after." I knelt to her level, gently taking her small hand. "Hi there," I whispered. "I'm Isabella, but you can call me Izzy, if you'd like." She didn't respond, of course, but her fingers wrapped around one of mine, firm enough to make something clear. Real connection doesn't come from silent sacrifice. It comes from conscious choice, on both sides. We sat together for almost an hour. Erin talked about sleepless nights, about learning the difference between hungry cries and cries for comfort. I listened, no interrupting, no trying to sound wiser. When she got ready to leave, I walked her to the door and placed a hand on her shoulder. "If you need a break, just to sleep or take a walk, call me." "I won't take advantage," she said quickly. I smiled. "And I'll remind you if I see you falling into old patterns." We nodded to each other, no contracts needed. 3 months after our final therapy session, my mother sent a short email. Subject: Sunday. The body had only one line. "Dad and I would like to have you over for dinner, just us, no requests." I read it and didn't reply right away. I thought about it carefully. And then I agreed, not out of forgiveness, but because I knew exactly what I'd bring with me when I stepped into that house. A woman with boundaries, with choices, with the right to say no. That evening was simple. Mom made stew, Dad poured tea. No one mentioned money. No one tiptoed around the past. When I got up to leave, my mom hugged me, not forcefully, and for the first time said, "Thank you for giving this family another chance." I didn't say it's nothing. I just nodded, slightly, and walked out the door. Now, every morning, I wake up in my own apartment, brew coffee, water the plants, and write a few lines in my notebook. Not to remember what was lost, but to hold on to what was reclaimed. I'm no longer afraid of becoming hard, because I know if I hadn't stood firm, there'd be nothing left of me. I don't know where you're listening from, maybe in your car, just before bed, or on a day when you need a story to remind you to keep going. Let me know where you're listening from. And if you'd like to hear more honest journeys like this, don't forget to follow the channel because the next story might be the one you need. Thank you for walking with me, from the uninvited party to the home I chose for myself. I hope you find a place that feels like yours too. Isabella's story is a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing isn't to forgive or to stay, but to step away, clearly and deliberately. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's loving yourself enough not to be wounded by unfair expectations. In real life, all of us will eventually have to separate ourselves from the idea of being the good child or the selfless relative. Because only when we're truly independent can we love others freely and in a healthy way.